first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you very much for joining us. We are live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, but sometimes we actually do leave the office as well. And this is one of those segments. We took a trip out to learn more about sustainable fashion, and that is from a local artist who is using bioplastics to create her own clothes and a lot of other items. We wanted to find out more about it, so we went out to see Cara Huato at her studio. Here it is. I'd love to know just a little bit about you, like how you got into this.
I got into bioplastics because I'm like a huge sustainability nerd, and so I was really interested in finding like natural and sustainable sources that we could kind of experiment and work with textile waste.
Okay.
And so yeah, I started looking into bioplastics and then really went crazy from there.
And so when you say bioplastics, can you give it that definition?
Yes, a bioplastic is really just a plastic that's made from any like living things. So it's bio in the sense of like biology, like living things. And then plastic is like a super broad definition of like flexible material. It's not very specifically defined materials in the way that like metals and other materials like that are defined. But yeah, bioplastic is just like comes from living things and has characteristics of a plastic.
Like what would be an example of something?
So like the biggest example is like most plastics come from fossil fuels. And so you can make similar plastics from like plants and derived from like plant glycerin, vegetable glycerin, as opposed to like synthetic glycerin.
Gotcha.
And so the one derived from like natural plants is a bioplastic, and then the one derived from like synthetic fossil fuels is not a bioplastic.
Gotcha. And so those are the differences there when it comes down to that. So when you're talking, where do you source bioplastic?
Yeah, I made my own. So I don't really source, I cook it. I gather my ingredients.
You cook your own bioplastics.
Yeah.
Wow. How do you combine bioplastics and cooking your own bioplastics with fashion?
Yeah. This was really like a big experiment jumble. I studied product design, and I took this materials class my last year, and like the premise for it was like, can we invent either new sustainable ways of working with things, or can we source waste materials? And I was like, what if we put those two together? So I was like looking into bioplastics, like trying to make new recipes, and then also like fashion waste is cool. Like what can we do with this? And they kind of just ended up being like, okay, I'm working on these two things. What if I just combine them? And from there, it's really been like a very slow evolution to get where I am. It's not like I set out being like, I'm gonna make clothes out of this. It was me being like, let's see what happens when we mix these together. And then, oh look, you can do this. Maybe I could use that in clothing.
So like almost a science experiment turned into this.
Yeah, for sure.
So when I'm looking at this, I see, a garment.
Yes.
I don't know what I would call it, but a garment. And so what is it about this? Like, can you walk through, what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so this is a fast fashion sweater that I got at the Goodwill bins. So very like close to end of life cycle, going in the trash for whatever reason. And this is like a culmination of the scientific research and also like my like artistic, like can we make fun, cool, like exciting things for us to wear. So this is actually one of my first unreleased experiments in applying molding into clothing. Most clothing is made from sewing or made from pattern making. When you see like extreme shapes, it's because somebody sat down with a flat piece of fabric and did a bunch of math and figured out how to sew all of this into a circle. And this concept is kind of like from some really dumb things that I noticed, I guess. Like in the fashion industry, one of the common things is like, don't put knitwear on a hanger because it stretches it out. I don't know if you've ever had like...
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, well, that's kind of dumb that we know that. But instead of being like, oh, knitwear stretches, we're like, don't ever put it on a hanger. So I was really thinking about like, how can we take some of these things that are like well-known facts and incorporate it in like a positive way, like spin it in a nice way? So I was like, okay, knitwear stretches. And my bioplastic combined with the right fiber types gives us the ability to mold shapes. So what if instead of creating a 3D form by sitting down and mathing it out and spending all this time and resources, I just mold an existing sweater into like 3D shapes? So that's how I ended up here.
So this is an existing sweater. You added in your bioplastics. And yeah, I can see, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah, you can go for it.
Yeah, it pops right back into the same shape.
Yeah. And it's like
wild.
It's really fascinating for me because you always see those like really crazy shaped garments. They're so inaccessible. They're so like for the elite and like going to crazy events and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're so expensive and so time intensive. This is like such a like accessible form of me making this. Like I didn't have to source expensive materials and spend a lot of time figuring out how I was gonna make it. I just kind of like got down with the sweater and the bioplastic and was like, let me mold this all up and see what happens.
And so this is something that, where would you envision this? Like if you could, would you mass produce this or how would this work?
I'm still trying to be very present with my experimentation. I don't like mass production because one of the core causes of me working with fashion waste is like, let's be more sustainable about this.
Sure.
I think one of the most interesting things about this technique in particular is being able to use cool 3D forms that we could then potentially wash out. So this bioplastic is holding it in like this really cool dramatic shape. A lot of times people buy crazy shaped things for one event, they wear it once, they never use it again. This sweater has a potential to be worn like this for like a crazy thing and like express yourself, and then also you could potentially wash out this biomaterial and then just have a normal sweater.
Wow. So it'd be, you can transform it into kind of whatever you want.
Yeah, and you can also reuse. Like I could wear the sweater like this, wash the bioplastic out, do a different shape, wash the bioplastic out, kind of like, that's where I see this going, is like how can we use what we have and how can we keep reusing it and not
like,
just see it as like one-time recycling.
Like multiple purposes for the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what happens next? You know, you're working on this, like what's the next?
Yeah. So I'm kind of simultaneously letting myself work on a bunch of different projects right now. One of the bigger things I'm putting out in November-ish is lamps. So one of the questions that I often think when I'm thinking about fashion waste is, we're taking this really wasteful industry and most people imagine it back into clothing. And in my head, I'm just like, why are we continuing to produce things that we know get worn very limited times and then need to be solved again? It's like engaging in this eternal problem. And so looking at the experiments and the forms that I was able to create, I was really thinking, how can we make clothing waste into things that are designed for longevity, are designed to express people and be accessible items in the way that clothing is, but also they live longer than a couple wears in the closet, and they can kind of be expressive in the same way clothing is. And so that led me to adventuring into like home goods.
Okay.
Home goods is an area where it's closely related to textiles. You know, we've got rugs and lampshades and all these things that are textile adjacent, which is kind of where some of my experiments have ended up. They're not necessarily, like, people don't look at this and see, oh, this is clothing. They're like, that's an interesting material, in the same way you might be if you looked at an interesting blanket or you looked at an interesting lampshade.
Right.
So yeah, these are going to be exhibited for London Craft Week, and I'm making a 20-piece collection of home good lamps.
And so, what did this start out as?
This is a sleeve from a sweater.
This is a sleeve from a sweater that you added on your bioplastics to, and now is a lamp.
Yes, and this has taken 2 years of testing and development, because one of the things of designing for longevity items is I want to make sure that it's going to hold up for longevity. So I started doing these experiments 2 years ago. I still have my day one experiments and they look great, and I dialed in the recipes for my bioplastic and everything. So this is really like a culmination of like, okay, now I know that these materials can be repurposed and live on in people's homes as cool artistic sculptures or lamps, or I'm working on some vases and things that are textile adjacent but really help us keep fast fashion waste out of landfill.
So when you're putting all of this together, you know, and you think about the future of where you're at, like all this that you're working, all these experiments and everything, like, what do you want people to see and what kind of impact do you want that to have on everyone?
The impact of this project has really been unfolding for me, and I've been able to have the opportunity to see it for what it is, but also understand some systematic things about the way we design through it. I really think the direction of this project in the future is like, this is my outlet to get my creativity out and for me to be hands-on and experiment. But the core of it is like, how can we change the design process to work with where we want to be in the future and how we want to live in conjunction with the resources that we have and how we want to better the planet. And so along with all this hands-on experimentation and stuff, I'm really getting into hardcore into design theory, trying to have a good communications and social media presence so I can maybe, I always said when I started out as a designer, I didn't care if my work was impactful, but I cared that it inspired the people who would make impact. Wow. So I really just want to like keep saying the things that I think need to be heard and put them out into the world and hope that other people can grab them and run with it, because we're tackling these really huge issues that I know I can't tackle myself, but I hope I can think outside the box and do fun, weird stuff that inspires the people who are gonna change the world.